Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fundamentalist Fails. It's Friday. It's the day. It's the day we go and we look at some of the most redonkulous stuff coming out from the fundamentalist section of Christianity, Muslims, any theist really, any theist up for grabs. But today we have Frank Turek up for grabs, and sometimes you've got to sort of stand back and wonder and marvel at the complete inanity, the complete insanity of some of these arguments coming out from these people from what is allegedly a professional apologist. Allegedly, okay. Look, I'm being harsh on Turek. So, look, my opinion of Turek is that the Turek that goes into debate people like Alex Connor, that goes into debate people who are serious philosophers or have a deep understanding of theology, philosophy, that know their shit about, basically. They know what they're talking about. It is completely different than when he gets up on stage in front of, college students or university students and sort of does his shtick on campus. And I think I chose this one because it is really notable how different he is when he has somebody who either has not gone through the education system and learnt about critical thinking, about sort of the fallacies that can come up, the sort of logical cul-de-sacs, the sort of foggy streets of disambiguation and sort of muddling terms. He has a completely different stance, and that's why I think that Turek's sort of one that I would point to that I don't know whether he's shilling. I don't know the man's mind, of course, but he really does tailor his approach to the audience he's engaged with. I would say in this one there are these arguments that I don't think he would bring up to someone like Alex Connor, right? Or when he's talking to if you ever talk to Matt Delahunty, he wouldn't bring this stuff up. There's no way he would bring it up, like, ever. And I think he knows that. I think he knows that there are... Okay, so I'll put it this way. I think he knows there are arguments that he can get fly past a college student that a philosopher would definitely rip to pieces. I think he knows what he can. I think Ray Comfort is sort of in the same boat, except Ray isn't as smart as Frank Turek, and he tries these arguments on with people he should know better not to. So I think that Ray is kind of similar. I think that, of course, Frank Turek isn't as ridiculous as Ray Comfort. I would never suggest that. How dare I? How dare I? But I think it is in the same boat, and you'll really see that in this video. It is a bit of a shorter one, but that's okay. We will get there together, you and me together. We will get past it. But I want to say, and I want to give a big props out to the student in this video. She does a fantastic job, and I will nitpick, I will criticize, I will sort of say, hey, this is what you could have done instead, because that's what I do here. I overanalyze stuff. You guys know I overanalyze everything. You know it. You love it. Well, I don't know about you love it. Look, you know it. You may hate it. You may have a hate relationship with it. But that's what I do here. So I'm going to be sort of analyzing and sort of pointing out where if people sling these kind of stuff at you, this is sort of how you address it. And before we start, though, and I do apologize, thank you, everybody, maybe just while I'm doing this sort of hiatus, do give a like. Do give a like for me, because, hey, I need all the help I can get, quite frankly. I need all the help I can get. But I know, and I did make a note, trying to get more organized, that I do have some readerships to give out. So, yeah, buckle up, all right? Just buckle in. Are you ready? Are you ready for the G-forces that is readerships going out there? All right, don't say you weren't warned. Bang! Okay, Google, you could have timed that better. You could have timed. Bam! There we go. That's better. That's better. So, Mark Reed atheism with the 5. Count them. 5. Well, I hope there's 5. 5 readerships. We have them going out to Cypher 131 probing time. Yeah, all right, probing. Good stuff, mate. Bigfoot Jesus to you, mate. Sparrow T1D Super Cripple. Wow. Okay. I don't know why I like that. I like that. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. Holy crap. Holy crap. And Jessica, the trans metal alchemist. Woohoo! Yeah, Jess, big fan of Jess. She is absolutely amazing. Absolutely just a institution here on Mark Reed Atheism. So happy that I hit Jess with that. Enjoy Jess especially. And is that bigoted in some way, Super Cripple? I don't know. I have known some people that have been in wheelchairs that could probably fold me up like a lawn chair, quite frankly. Man, some of those dudes, you see them like playing basketball and stuff, and their arms are just... It's, okay. You know, if I'm ever forced to fight you, I hope I can outrun you, because damn, you're here to over... Thank you. Oh, Tommy, who do you want me to ban, mate? Who do you want me to ban? Point me in the right direction. I'm in a banning mood. Point me in the right direction. Tommy! Don't just throw out a ban hammer with nobody reference. That doesn't help me at all. I am joking. I don't just willy-nilly ban people, but that is the most popular emote. I've got to do some more or something. I don't know. Justin, I miss you. Okay, so I saw the funniest meme on my my Discord chat. I think Titan Uranus sent it in, which is just hilarious. It was hang on a sec. I'll get it up on the thing. And this is for you, Justin. This is for you, mate. All right. This is for you, my brother from another hemisphere. This is for you. Okay. Hang on a sec. Open image link. That'll do. Yeah. All right. Let me share this. Let me share this, because this made me laugh. Okay, and I got to share it with you people, because dang, you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. Chrome tab? Yeah, okay. How does this look? Yeah, there we go. So, Caleb, saw an Australian on here rooting for the Canadian soccer team, calling them cold Aussies. And I just want to say that this is extremely offensive on many levels. Take the compliment, Snowbogan. Look, I now have a favorite name for I have a favorite name for Canadians, you know, the Letterkenny kind of Canadians, and that is Snowbogans. I love it. I absolutely adore it. So Justin, you Snowbogan, welcome to the Southern Hemisphere, mate. Welcome to the Southern Hemisphere. No, it says ban. It's my ban hammer. Look, I can't, like, when someone's being absolutely horrible, I can't just ban them without putting an emoji in to tell everybody what's happened. I mean, come on. What am I running here? Like some amateur hour? Come on now. Come on. Oh, hello, Tori. I got to say hello to Tori. But look, so today we're doing Frank Turek. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Turek, he's sort of been around for a while. I believe that he started off in marketing. So I think that if nothing else, Turek is very emblematic of what you can do with religion and a marketing degree, right? Like he markets himself very well. I think he markets himself as a very deep thinker, but I don't think he comes out with anything particularly original or good. I think he he sort of piggybacks off a lot deeper thinkers like William Lane Craig, like the sort of Matt Slicks of the world kind of thing. I think he really sort of stands on the shoulders of little people. So I would say giants, but there is no possible world where I'm calling Matt Slick a giant. There's no possible world where that is going to happen. So he really does sort of piggyback off them, but he is way better at marketing. I mean, look, honestly, Cross-Examined, that is a really good name for a YouTube channel. Okay? That's a really good name. I pay that. Okay, that is really good. I mean, I came up with Fundamentalist Fails, and I felt good about it. Cross-Examined for a Christian channel? Come on, that is branding right there. That is a good example of marketing. I'm not even joking. It is. So that's probably what I think he is best at. But he kind of has this thing where he goes to colleges, to universities, and he sort of does these talks to them. I think that he really does, I think that he's not talking to a room full of scientists, a room full of philosophers for a reason. And I think that going into universities and giving these sort of TED Talks is one way where I think they really are going to try to, influence the young. But at the same time, I really think they're trying to find people who don't have the tools to argue back. Look, I've been to university, okay? There's nothing wrong with university students, but they are young. I think once you get out in the world and you sort of talk to people, a lot of the sort of conceptions that you had when you went through college or university, or even just if you're doing a apprenticeship or something, they sort of fall apart. They kind of fall apart. Yeah, Aunt Joe, that was the parody name. That was in the Humanity. It was Cross Purposes. Yeah, that was it. So here we have Cross-Examined. It's not a particularly long one, but again, I wanna give a big shout out to whoever the girl is in it. She does a fantastic job, and I want to point out a few things that definitely she's absolutely doing right. Now, the other thing I want you to do is look. What about What about cross-dressing? Would that be good? Probably Christians wouldn't use that. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, you're a teacher. No, look. I mean, you were a university student once. Frigging snowbogan.
So I thought your argument was very interesting, especially.
Yeah, your argument was very interesting. Yeah, that's a very diplomatic way of saying it was a bad argument, which, yeah, I kind of get. Yeah.
As someone who has taken a logic course, has studied logic before, your logical reasoning was interesting to me, and I'm not sure I exactly follow it. Okay. Your 2 points especially, and your 3 little points there you had for...
Now, I don't know if this girl is a philosophy major or whether, I do know that, I was involved in a completely different field, right? Like, I was involved in, computer side of things, like networked computers, network systems, and integrated circuits. I was completely in something different, and I did a sort of couple of units on critical thinking, just electives kind of thing. I'm not sure what system. I know that the US has a different system, but I think that if you are going through university or college or something like it, take some electives, some minors or whatever. I really encourage people to take those electives in critical thinking or sort of a philosophy minor. I totally get, like, don't get me wrong. I totally get that, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of work. Okay. Some days I was locked in my room coding, basically, and my wife would push food under the door for me. Okay. I really was just 100% focused on the course that I was on, but I don't regret doing sort of something like that on the side. But I totally understand if the work can be too much, and as an elective you want to go like social media kind of thing. I get it. I totally get it. I think that sort of social media as a concept is horrifying. Looks really good on a resume. Tell you that much for sure. And it can be really used. There's a lot of electives or minors or whatever you guys call it that is very, very, very useful. Really good for your resume, stuff like that. So I totally understand why somebody would go, yeah, not going to take philosophy. I don't think it'll help me as I try to get my job in, strategic marketing kind of thing. I totally get it. I still encourage people to do it because it really does help in your entire life, like how you look at things, how you analyze things, how you find out what is true and what is not. Now, having said that, prioritize what you got to prioritize. I know that it is so much more expensive to do college or university in the United States. It's ridiculous. So, I don't want to sort of say, hey, definitely take it, but just consider it. Consider something, But obviously, either she is studying philosophy or she's done a unit that deals with logic and critical thinking, which I think is fantastic. That is fantastic.
The credibility of the Bible.
The New Testament? Yeah. You want me to put them up there again?
Sure.
I can do that.
Yeah, for sure. I thought those are especially interesting because I'm not exactly sure, out of all the arguments for God, why you would choose those ones. But let me ask you one especially about the eyewitness is very interesting to me.
So I'm not sure if we actually get this coming up or not, but Frank sort of has this, he's sort of got that argument where he's kind of the lunatic liar or lord, right? Like he's got something along those lines. Like, why would these people lie about something they didn't experience, right? Like, so if they saw something, or they believed they saw Jesus rise from the dead, like he was alive again, why would they lie about it? And there's a very, very easy thing about this, that he's basically presenting a false trichotomy, right? That it's either lunatic, liar, or Lord, right? Like either Jesus was crazy and just a crazy man, he's lying about it, or he is in fact the Son of God. And those aren't the only three options. There's a myriad of options available, because we're not talking about a claim by Jesus. We're talking about other people claiming that he rose from the dead, right? Like that's what we're talking about. And there may be a myriad of reasons. They don't need to be lying to say, hey, we saw this guy rise from the dead. People can be mistaken all the time. There's documented cases where people have been grieving. They've lost their husband, they've lost their wife, they've lost their child, and they see them again, right? They think they have an interaction with them, and it is the brain. I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a delusion, but it is kind of, they are mistaken and trying to bring something back that's gone. Like there is that possibility. There's the possibility that these people were just trying to get the people of the Jewish sort of city to rise up against the Romans. Am I saying that's the case? No, I don't know, right? And that's the whole point. It's not on me to prove something else happened, right? Because their argument is that these are the only possibilities, right? Like, the only possibilities is that Jesus actually rose from the dead. That is the only possibility left. And that's not true, right? Like, there's other possibilities. So I don't have to prove that those possibilities in fact actually happened. All I have to do is say, hey, it's possible that these people were so in grief with the leader of their the most important thing in the world to them, their faith, their religion. I mean, I would go so far as to say a bit of a doomsday cult had unexpectedly died, that they imagined they were talking to them. They sort of did this, and then legend building takes over. They told friends, friends told friends, the story gets overblown, and it can be a combination of a lot of different things. Maybe some people were lying, right? Maybe other people really wanted to believe it so much that they convinced themselves that this happened. I don't know, right? This is the thing. It is a lot more complex than just, well, they were either all lying or it actually happened. That is not, no, there are other possibilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that L. Ron Hubbard is a real person?
Well, he was a real person. You're talking about the guy that wrote Dianetics and is the father of Scientology?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is Scientology real?
So what she's doing here is basically doing, and I'll try out the technical term, she's doing a reductio ad absurdum. She's putting a contrary in the same place, right? So this is, you might not realize that this is actually an internal critique. So she's taking the idea that if all of these people claim that Jesus rose from the dead, right? Like if all of these people claim it, then it's got to be true, or else they're all lying. They can't all be mistaken. They can't all be, making it up. They can't all be deluded. They can't all be, just, there's too many people. There's too many stories that, either L. Ron Hubbard was a liar, a lunatic, or in actual fact, the prophet. The prophet who was sent to teach you Dianetics and take your money, apparently. So, like, she's basically putting a contrary, like some other example, in the same place in his argument, basically replacing the Jesus with L. Ron Hubbard and saying, do you get to the same conclusion? And of course, Frank Turek doesn't, right? L. Ron Hubbard is not a prophet. Scientology is not true. But the question is, why not? Because if you're going to base your argument on, liar, lunatic, Lord, and, obviously some of the people in Scientology sincerely believe what they're saying. I mean, I think that they are completely wrong, but they sincerely believe that this person was a prophet. Why wouldn't you believe it? If you're going to be intellectually consistent, why wouldn't you believe it applied to there? I think another great example is Joseph Smith, right? Who people still think he was a prophet, even considering what he did while he was alive, which is pretty terrible. But, why don't you believe them? Are they all lying? Well, no, we don't think they're all lying. Maybe some of them are. But this is the thing. This is where it's a lot more nuanced than just, well, they're all lying, or this actually happened in the way that it is claimed to. It's a lot more nuanced than that. But Frank doesn't deal with nuance, okay? But I want you to watch for just how quickly Frank pivots when he's confronted with somebody that actually is presenting good arguments. And watch for the pivot, because he won't want to address this, because then he's got to explain why his religion he will take a written claim that all of these people saw the risen Christ as, well, pun intended, gospel, right? Like, he will take it as a hard fact for his religion, but completely ignore it for everybody else's. And that's a difficult question to answer. Because if you're going to be intellectually consistent, you should evaluate all the claims that these people are making without any bias towards your own. And I'm sorry to say, but most religions will bias their own religion because they already believe it. And that's not a good reason for believing something.
Well, I don't believe the beliefs of Scientology are real, but there are Scientologists, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that was an interesting point then when you were talking about the historical evidence for people like Herod, for people like Pilate in
Right.
the Bible. I agree. Those are real people. However, I do not think that your argument that you're making regarding them existing in the Bible and them also being real people actually argues for the credibility of the Bible itself.
And this is a beautiful point from her. Just because you have, David, Solomon existed, Herod existed, Pontius Pilate was certainly the overseer of Judea at that time. Like, that is absolutely, we have coins with his head. It is an indisputable fact that Pontius Pilate was a real person. That doesn't mean the entire story is true, right? It's like, I think Delahunty uses a Spider-Man example. I would use a Space Jam example, right? Like, just because Michael Jordan is in Space Jam doesn't mean that Space Jam happened. Okay, Michael Jordan is absolutely a real person. Absolutely. He wasn't Space Jam, wasn't he? Am I screwing this up? I'm pretty sure he was, right? So just because Michael Jordan was in Space Jam doesn't mean that the events of Space Jam happened. Like, and you can do this with a myriad of different things. Her point is, just because L. Ron Hubbard was certainly we have books written by the guy, which is more than we have for Jesus, right? Which is more than we have for Herod, which is more than we have for a lot of people, right? Just because he is a real person doesn't give any evidence that the things that he claimed in fact actually happened, right? And this is why, as far as the mythicism question, whether Jesus was a complete myth or whether there was a itinerant preacher by the name of Yeshua who was preaching around, the area of Judea, Bethlehem at this time, I don't care that much, right? I will leave it to the historians to sort of designate whether we think that was most likely a real person or we think it was a completely historic, mythological figure. I won't die on that hill, right? I really don't care that much about it because, even if Jesus was 100% a real person, like Pontius Pilate, right? Like Pilate was a real person, even if he was, it does nothing to support any of the miraculous things or the supernatural things that happened. Nothing at all. Right? Any more than if Julius Caesar was a real person, it does nothing to support whether he was an incarnation of Sol Invictus, a god that ruled over Rome. It doesn't support that at all. Even if he was a real person, even if Kim Jong Un is a real person, it doesn't mean he is a god in North Korea. It doesn't support that. So, it's a really good point by her to sort of say, well, and I mean, Frank can go, well, that's not entirely what that's not what I'm basing it on. But then why bring up the argument? Why sort of say, hey, we know the Bible to be credible because it has Pontius Pilate in it, it has Herod in it, we know that was we have these historical figures. And it's like, yeah, but every single book will have historical figures that we know existed. It doesn't mean the events in them are true. History doesn't look at text like that. It doesn't look at it as in, well, this person wrote a book, it contains real people, therefore everything that book claims is absolutely true. That is religion, not history.
I'm not sure it argues for the existence of God itself or, the credibility of Christianity just using that.
Well, you're right. That's because I don't just use that in the book. I glossed over the arguments for the existence of God to get to this since it's Easter week.
Yeah, I glossed over the arguments for the existence of God to get to this. So you assume God exists, and then you basically say, hey, because the Bible has real people in it, then Jesus was the representative of the God I've assumed existed. Well, I mean, I don't see why you would do that, right? Like, I don't see why you would do, like, you can assume that a God exists and go to the Quran. Muhammad existed. He was a person. We know he was a person because he attacked a lot of towns. But we know these people, that there are real people documented. So why focus on this one? It's because it's his religion. He's biased towards this religion. And I mean, you can just say, hey, I'm biased towards your religion. It's not really something that anybody can take issue with, but she has a fantastic point that him using real people in a book doesn't even do anything to support that the person that is central to your book is actually a messenger of the God that you presuppose exists. It doesn't. And her point still stands that that L. Ron Hubbard is definitely a real person. So why should it not point to L. Ron Hubbard being the prophet of that God? Do you see what I mean? Like, just because real people are in it, it doesn't even get you to, well, then they're obviously a prophet of the God that I'm assuming exists already. No, it could still be a false religion. It doesn't get you 1 inch closer at all.
Week.
Sure.
And I can't cover it all. But if we had more time, I could talk about the fine-tuning of the universe and the necessary for intelligence to create the first.
Okay, I'll put it another way. Just because you assume there's a God, let's, for the sake of argument, assume there is a God being a transcendent agent who has the power to circumvent or alter some or all of the laws of nature. Okay, just say that that entity exists. Okay, the Bible having real places and people that actually existed doesn't get you to Christianity being true. Her point still stands. Right? Why does real people in the Bible point to yours being true, but real people in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu texts, not point to it? Or the scrolls of Buddhism, right? Like, just assume for a second you're right and a God exists. It still doesn't get you to Christianity. Because her point still stands. Real people being in a book does not make the truth of that book. Right? You need other things.
Life and new life forms and the moral argument for God and the argument from laws of logic and
yeah, and you're right, Kaylee. You're 100% right. This is gish galloping. You're 100% right. Yes. If this was an actual debate, it would be gish galloping. Obviously, so the reason why I dislike these, I mean, I don't dislike them. I dislike the way that people like Turek, like Ray Comfort, Ray Comfort's the worst, right? Like, he absolutely domineers over people that are uncertain. That's what the man does. Frank's not as bad as that guy, but it's still pretty bad because there is, like, with these sort of questionnaire segments kind of thing, there is a power imbalance. right? There is a natural power imbalance. Frank gets to dictate where the conversation goes, and the person asking the questions cannot really challenge them that much. It's why I dislike this sort of format. I think that somebody in good faith, somebody working in good faith will address the questions, will allow the person asking questions to direct the flow of it, right? But, what Frank's doing here is he's just throwing up a massive smoke screen, right? Like, he hasn't actually addressed how real people in a book in any way contributes to all the events in the books being true. It doesn't. Right? So he's basically just deflecting. And I think he is like attempting to pivot into another topic.
Consciousness and laws of mathematics, those transcendental arguments, if we had more time to get into the arguments for God.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but she's not really going for the arguments for God. She's asking why existing elements and truly existing elements in a book, in a written text, lend itself to all of the text being true. Right? There could be a God, and still the people who wrote the Bible could have used real elements and made it up. Right? Like, it could be a fictional narrative that still includes true elements. It doesn't address that, even if there's a God. So really, he's not addressing the actual question. That's a weird comment. Prisca Theologica. Haven't heard of that one. Maybe that's my fault. Ancient theology? Harmonization of pagan philosophy with Christian theology? Okay, this sounds a bit wooey. I mean, I'll check it out, but it does sound a bit wooey to me. Primary text included figures and writing attributed to Hermes, the Greek god of messenger god. Okay, this is more perennial philosophy, which is kind of, yeah, I'm not really a big fan of, I got to admit. Like, perennial philosophy is kind of this sort of idea that mysticism sort of, it's a prevalent sort of preoccupation of humans is mysticism or spirituality, or, insert your sort of nebulous concept here. And even if humans are predisposed to mysticism, as it were, or this sort of mystical thinking, basically, it doesn't mean that it's actually true. I think perennial philosophy is absolutely terrible. I think that it's interesting in the way that humans will humans, when they have a gap of knowledge, will conceptualize and invent things to fill that gap. Like, we seem to be very uncomfortable in not having any explanation. We seem to be incredibly uncomfortable with that. And, I think it's natural. I think that we do have a natural tendency to fill patterns to sort of try to insert something into there, but that doesn't make it true.
I'm actually familiar with all of those.
Okay.
And still, I'm an atheist, actually, even being familiar with all of those. But my real question for you right now is specifically on these eyewitnesses for the resurrection. You argue a lot for the resurection. Now, a lot of the New Testament, the earliest times the Gospels were ever written down and published were in the 70s AD. People who were writing them, like Paul, never met Jesus. I don't think a lot of people know that, but he did not ever meet Jesus.
Okay, well, why do you think? First of all, why do you think the
I gotta say, I'm not a big body language guy, but he does look defensive. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's just being contemplative. I'm not sure, but he does look defensive. So she's not wrong. The earliest Gospels were 60, 70 years after the fact, kind of thing. Like, it is a long time afterwards, and Paul's writing were 30 years afterwards. Like, we've got to understand that these texts are not contemporary, right? When we talk about contemporary texts, we're talking about texts that were written at the time of the event or events they are describing. Okay, so when I can't remember who was the historian. They wrote about the volcanic eruption kind of thing. Hang on a sec, I'll look it up. Eruption. Yes, Pliny the Younger wrote about Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. He wrote sort of 2 letters to Tacitus, sort of saying, hey, they're, describing it kind of thing. And sort of, his uncle died in it. That is a contemporary source, right? They are writing it sort of at the event. And yeah, it may be written afterwards, right? Like, it may be that Pliny the Younger sort of wrote it afterwards as after this event, but it's at least within a few years. Like, it's not 30, 40, up to 70 years later that this is being penned down. And it's fine to say, hey, this could have been a copy, but we don't know that. Okay, we don't know that there were any earlier copies than this. The reason why we don't know is because these are the earliest we've found.
New Testament documents were written in the 70s and 80s.
That is archaeological facts that they have corroborated multiple different accounts and multiple different scholars.
What are the archaeological facts that say that?
Okay, so I think Frank's just being disingenuous here because, like, if you talk to biblical scholars, even the Christian ones, they will not deny that the age of the Gospels were not written, 20 years afterwards or 10 years after. They will not claim that, okay? Nobody is claiming what Frank's trying to suggest, which is he's going, oh, how do you know they were written 70? Frank, you know as well as I do that all of the biblical scholars, including the Christian ones, have dated the Gospels to about that time. Like, seriously, he is just being disingenuous here. Because he hopes she'll be able to say, well, I don't know how they've, dated the... And he can go, see, you don't know if they were or not. Come on, man. Like, seriously? Like, nobody argues that. Nobody. Holy crap.
The New Testament documents were written in the 70s and the 80s.
Those are dated. They're dated around the time literarily, linguistically. You can look it up. I was just reading before I came here.
Yes, Frank, you can look it up. And I like that she's sort of, not folding and going, oh, well, I don't really know. Yeah, they've been dated. Like, in the same way that you're sort of, hey, we know that they came from the area. Sure. How do you know that, Frank? Were you there? Were you there? Like, I refuse to think that Frank Turek doesn't know that the Gospels were not written, were written 60, 70 years after. I refuse to believe it. I think he knows enough, like, to know when the Gospels were, when the copies of the Gospels we have were written. I think he knows. I believe it's Seneca. There's a couple of sources for them, right? And sort of, we know when they were written, Frank. The Synoptic Gospels, and there's a Q source and a I believe it's a P source. So yeah, this is just really disingenuous. Hey, Skeptic Haven Raiders, welcome. Welcome. Me hearties apparently aren't you starting a pirate-themed thing. Sure, Jer, no worries. No worries. But welcome to the Raiders, apparently, from Skeptic Haven. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It hasn't mentioned anything. It might be one of those manual raids, like just join and give Mark Reed a hard time. Here, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
The scholar Bart Ehrman, he had a really great
Yes.
post about that. I encourage you to look at it. I encourage everyone to look at it because a lot of those new gospels, that's the earliest they were written, was 70s AD. Latest was even up until the 120s AD is when they preserved.
Yeah, well, I don't think Bart Ehrman's correct about that.
Oh, what are you basing that on, sir? When, like, Bart Ehrman, like, it's not like when he says that, he is saying anything contentious in the biblical academia, right? Like biblical scholars. He's not saying anything contentious. That is the consensus. Like, I don't know anybody that would argue against that, except for Turek, apparently. But I'm sure if he was sitting in front of Bart Ehrman, like, this is what I made the point of. He will ask these questions to a student. He would never dare challenge Bart Ehrman on this. The man has forgotten more about the Bible than Frank Turek will ever know. He is a proper biblical scholar, right? Like, you may disagree with him, but he is. So is Richard Carrier, right? And they have different views on whether Jesus was a real person or not. But he that's when they've been dated. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm sorry that upsets you or, interferes with your argument that, hey, there was real people in there. But, and see, the thing is that I don't think he would push that against a biblical scholar because he knows better. And that's what irritates me. He knows better and he's trying to challenge her because she's younger and Frank thinks she doesn't know anything. Oops, turns out she does.
Even if he is correct about it, the source material...
Even if he's correct. Yeah, Frank, yeah, if he's correct. Yeah, and even if the vast overwhelming majority of all biblical scholars, including Christians, are correct. Yeah, thanks, Frank, thanks.
From the documents themselves predate when they were written. For example, even Bart Ehrman...
The documents themselves predate when they were written. By how much, Frank? How do we know? How do we know? That's the problem. We don't have the originals. So they might have been written a year beforehand. We don't know. That's the problem. This is the thing. He's just assuming that, the documents were written right after the events happened. Were they? We don't know that. I mean, who is making the huge assumptions here? Is the student making the huge assumptions? No. She's saying that this is the earliest documents that we have are 60. For the Gospels, the Pauline writings are a bit earlier, sure. But for the Gospels, it is over half a century after the events, kind of thing. You may be right. Like, it is possible that there were documents that were written earlier, but you're assuming that. So who's making the assumptions here? Well, it's Frank Turek who's saying, hey, we know that those documents were around earlier. Do we? There's another problem as well, which Bart Ehrman points out fantastically, that Mark 16, there's a long ending to it, 9 to 20, that we thought was the real Bible, that we thought Mark had in it. Turns out we found earlier copies, way earlier copies, that don't have that ending. That was added later. So it is entirely possible that there are other sections that were added to the Bible or sections that were taken away that we don't know about because we don't have the originals. We have no idea. I mean, we can sort of make some inference as to what should be in there, what shouldn't, based upon the literary style, based upon, how people wrote and things like that. But we don't know for sure. because we thought that the long ending of Mark was the correct one, and it wasn't. But yeah, this is all, you know, oh, you're assuming there wasn't an earlier work that, you know, is exactly the same as the one we have. Why would you assume that? Why would you assume that there is one? She is going on facts. He is going on wishful thinking.
Would admit that the creed in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 to 8, I referred to it very briefly today, that talked about that Paul received what was told to him about who Jesus appeared to. It includes all the people Jesus appeared to, with the exception of the women.
Yeah, it like this entire thing of, oh, well, he appeared to these people. If he's talking about the disciples, I think that's who he's talking about, because they're the only ones named. I mean, Paul says that he appeared to 500 people, but doesn't say who they are. Doesn't say who they are in the slightest, so I'm not sure. And, you know, if you have a doomsday cult that is predicting the end of the world, because that's ostensibly what the Christian religion based around Jesus was, that whose central figure ups and dies, you know, if you go and talk to the members of that sect, okay, maybe cult's a bit harsh, but that doomsday sect, they're all going to be on the same page. I don't know why you would think that they wouldn't be. And so he just notes down 500 people, which is a conveniently round number, to be honest with you. But do we know that Paul actually spoke to these people? No. There's nothing supporting it. We don't know.
And then the 500 others, that particular creed goes all the way back to within a year or two of the alleged resurrection itself.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd be saying that creed goes back to then, because Paul didn't get onto the scene until much later. Jesus was already dead by the time Paul showed up, so I don't know why you would say that. You know, there are no other documents supporting it. I think he's sort of talking about the Corinthian Creed. Corinth Creed written. Yeah, so I mean, take it with a grain of salt. This is just the AI overview. So it says that the creed was composed likely a few months to 5 years after the death of Jesus. Likely. Right? But so what? So what? Paul didn't see Jesus rise from the dead. He never even met Jesus at all. In any way. 1 Corinthians... So it's 1 Corinthians 15, 3 to 7. Actually, I'll get the NIV. So this is what he is talking about when he's talking about the creed that goes back. Right? Like, this is what he's talking about. 5 to 7, so 5, and that he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12, right, which is the disciples. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are living, although some have fallen asleep. Then he appears to James, then to all the Gospels. That's it. Right? He appeared. That's all. That's the entirety of what he's talking about. That, hey, the guy died, and then he appeared. And that's it. There's nothing else in there. That's not exactly conclusive proof. That is just a claim. Right? So, when you're talking about the sort of resurrection, there's also two different sort of accounts, because Paul said that Jesus appeared to these people in the same way that Jesus appeared to him, right? So the Damascus Road experience, Paul on the road sees light and hears the voice of presumably Jesus. He'd never met Jesus, so I don't know how we'd know it's Jesus's voice, but he claims it was Jesus, right? So if Paul is saying that Jesus appeared to him in the same way, and to the other people in the same way he appeared to Paul, then what we're talking about is a vision, not an actual person, which seems to conflict with the Gospels when they're talking about, that they meet him and they put fingers in holes, and they're doing all the basically the border control stuff to check him out. They're investigating him. So it seems to be a conflict. But if you're taking Paul at what he is saying, then they had a vision of him, which isn't exactly conclusive. So, I don't know why you would have just, a claim like this from a guy, and then go, well, that's obviously true because it was written about the same time. It does seem to conflict with what other people wrote about it, though. And, I don't know why you'd just believe a claim by somebody with no supporting evidence. You know what? Look, you snowbogan. Frank's in another country than me, and I feel like he's standing too close to me, quite frankly. Honestly. Yeah, but full props to her. She is she's got some really good points. It's just that the format that she's doing, I think there is a power, like she doesn't get the opportunity to push back on some of this nonsense that's coming out. Which is why we're here, right?
So the data is very old. Paul wrote 1 Corinthians in 55 AD. Even Bart Ehrman would agree with that.
Yeah, that's still over 20, about 20 years afterwards, sir. 20 years. A lot can change in 20 years, my guy.
Do you have a source for that?
Bart Ehrman.
I'll go look it up afterwards, for sure.
Yeah, I think he's about right. When was 1 Corinthians? Bart Ehrman blog. Let's go to the Bart Ehrman blog. When was it written? Oh, he's going into it in depth, and that is, I just wanted a quick answer, but I just wanted a quick answer, mate. But that's okay. I'm glad he does the background. 7 undisputed Pauline letters. Yeah, there's a lot of other letters which sort of are disputed as forgeries. That we're almost certain that they're forgeries. So he's talking about 1 Corinthians 14:35 is an interpolation, right? So 1 Corinthians 14:34 to 35, scholars argue that has been added by the Christian church, right? So that word interpolation, sorry, you probably can't see that very well. Interpolation, that one there, that is a word meaning that somebody else has inserted something into the text. Interpolation is like when the young Earth creationists get their own interpretation of a scientific paper and kind of insert it in there. That's basic. I'm really... Yeah, the verses appear to contradict Paul's view of women. Paul did not like women. Paul did write 1 Corinthians, but probably not these two commonly cited verses. So stuff was added to it, which doesn't speak well for the entire text, you know. I'm trying to find out where he dates it. So basically what he's saying is that I think it was about 30 years, like, 30 years afterwards, maybe 20 years afterwards. It's usually dated mid-50s. Right. So, 33, presumably when Jesus died. So it's like 20 years afterwards, you know. So yeah, Turek's right. That's when Bart Ehrman does date it. That's fine. That's fine.
And I'll check on it because that's not what I found personally. But
Okay.
I'm actually interested too in that case about those eyewitness accounts. Have you ever had a friend who's told you, a funny story, and they're saying, yeah, I swear this happened. I swear I saw it. But, you're not sure. You weren't there. You don't know. Sometimes people embellish a little bit.
Yeah, so this is her sort of building up the case of sort of legend building kind of thing. We also have to remember that these people were all in a religious organization, right? Like it's sort of, I'm going to go back to when she mentioned L. Ron Hubbard, because Scientologists would absolutely confirm that L. Ron Hubbard was a prophet. But there's no, we've got to keep in mind that there is inherent bias with these people, right? We're talking about all the people who were signed up for Jesus' ministry, that believed that he was going to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth and that he was the Messiah, right? Like, we've got to remember that. And I'm not saying that they're lying, right? I'm not saying, oh, it's a conspiracy, they all got together. It's that there is groupthink. There is such a thing as people being influenced by the people around them to think a certain way. And they're not deluded, they're not lying, but they believe something. When somebody says, oh, I see the Lord, and it's just a bush on the horizon or something, others who are in the same group will have a tendency to see the same thing. As people in groups, humans are very suggestible. We just are.
So I'm not seeing the necessary connection between me believing these eyewitness accounts. Sure, I suppose that there were definitely people, even if these New Testament authors weren't actually seeing the resurrection themselves, which they weren't, even if they were talking to people who were, I'm not sure I actually would believe that, or if I'd have any reason to believe them. So my question is to you, what is these actual eyewitnesses, what is their credibility? Like, why should I be compelled to believe them?
Right. So in a court of law, it would absolutely be hearsay, right? Because don't forget, Paul wasn't at the resurrection. He didn't, have any involvement in the events at the resurrection. He wasn't one of the apostles. He didn't know Jesus. He was completely removed from the whole thing. He says, 500 people told me they saw this guy murder his wife, right? That is hearsay. We don't accept that in law, in a court, in maybe civil, but not criminal, right? And there's a good reason why. It's because you're not actually presenting any kind of evidence. You're presenting sort of testimony from people, but not yourself, right? Like, if you want, get those 500 people on the stand and get them to testify that what they saw, right? But we don't just take people's word for it because they've claimed to have seen something. And so what we have here is a case of Paul saying that people told him what he saw. Now, there's two chains of problems here, because if it is a case of groupthink and they have convinced themselves of something that is not true, then that is one point of failure, that they didn't actually see the risen Jesus and they are just, maybe they envisaged it. They just sort of convinced themselves they saw it. Or they had a vision, You know, in their grief, they had a vision kind of thing. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe God sent a vision. I don't know, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Jesus is resurrected. Number two, you have the point of failure of Paul, who could have made it up. He just made it up. That, hey, I spoke to 500 people is a very round number. He specifically says 500 brothers and sisters. You know, I don't know if it was exactly 500. It seems, you know, you would imagine he's just saying around 500, but it seems oddly specific. And, you know, he could have just said, hey, I spoke to 500 people. Most of them are still alive. Some have passed away, though. Does he say who they are? No. Does he give any way to check with them? No. Was it 500? We don't know. What if it was 20? You know, 20 people thought they had saw the risen Jesus. Does that make it more credible? You know, because if you go check, you would find some. But I can find people that says they've seen Bigfoot. Does that make it credible? No, if I write it down and say, hey, I spoke to 500 people who thought they saw Bigfoot, it doesn't make Bigfoot credible.
On only their word.
Well, because they suffered greatly for saying what they saw, and they were not
look, Antje, don't be too harsh. Don't be too harsh. Listen, mate, like when you go talking to Frank Turek, you don't want like something pushing on your stomach. Seriously, it's a bad time, right? Your stomach's going to roll a bit. You want a bit of looseness there, okay? You can't tighten up and sort of have pressure on your stomach when talking to Turek. It's a bad time.
Predisposed to these beliefs.
Yeah, and when was this painting painted? Like seriously, the story is that Peter was crucified upside down in mockery of the death of Christ kind of thing. Number one, there's absolutely no historical evidence for this. It's just what the church says. The early church says it. This painting is obviously from, the Middle Ages, most possibly, somewhere in the realms of 1,200, 1,400. This is not a current painting. Number two, crucifixion doesn't work upside down. The whole point for crucifixion is that you have to keep yourself upright in order to breathe, and when you can't, like your chest collapses when you sag, and you've got to keep yourself upright. It's a horrible way to die, but that's not the same upside down. Now, I'm sure it'd be uncomfortable and everything, but it just sort of smacks of something that the church has said because it sounds good, right? Peter was crucified upside down in mockery of our Lord. It's like, why would anybody ever do that? Like, seriously. Blood rushes to your head, you pass out. I don't know.
They held beliefs that were opposite this. They didn't think a man could claim to be God. That was blasphemy. In fact, that's what got Jesus killed. They didn't think one guy would rise from the dead.
Well, he didn't really claim to be God. Like, I know that Christians take inference when he says, I am who I am kind of thing. Like, they kind of say, oh, he was inferring. But he never outright said, I am God. He never said that. He could, son of man, son of God, but not like, that is something that is interpreted that way by Christians. He never outright said it. And so they have debates over whether he said that or not. And a lot of it is, well, he said this and that could be inferred. Yeah, but he never outright said it. Okay, so, as far as I was aware, if you did claim to be God in that time in the Jewish religion, it was kind of blasphemy. What do you mean kind of? It was blasphemy. So he never actually claimed it. And sort of this thing about, it was unexpected that he claimed it. It was unexpected that he died.
In the middle of time. They thought everyone would rise from the dead at the end of time because that's what Daniel and Isaiah say. So they were not predisposed to believe this. They thought they were God's chosen people. Why would they invent a resurrection story that would get them kicked out of the synagogue and then beaten, tortured, and killed?
Because they were part of a doomsday, let's call it sect. Okay, they thought the end was coming, and Jesus said that the kingdom of God will be established before some of you here have passed away. So they were expecting the kingdom of heaven to be established by Jesus on earth, and everything to happen in their lifetimes. They were expecting the end of everything and the establishment of the wonderful new church of God in their lifetimes, which didn't happen. It didn't happen. And so a person who has, because don't forget that Jesus said, sell all your worldly belongings. He said, sort of give up the material life, sell everything, sort of cast off your material possessions. So people were all in on this. All in. And it didn't happen. And the guy who was supposed to lead them there died. It's not a great stretch to think that on one hand they've got a religion that they've completely devoted themselves to. The leader dies, they can either go, oh, well, that religion was fake and a whole bunch of crap. He died. The kingdom of heaven isn't coming, certainly not within my lifetime. Or they can double down and say, maybe he can come back. And from there, it's not a great stretch for them to think he has come back, because he can't possibly have died.
I think that same argument, though, could be used for many other religions. I mean, the same thing. If every other major religion...
Such as what?
Sure, such as all of the people who have ever died for Islam, who have ever...
Yep, so again, she pulls out the reductio. Let's put a contrary in the same argument and see if it produces a result that is the same. And she's absolutely right. I think that Mormonism, and Alex O'Connor used Mormonism as a fantastic example. There are people that died for Mormonism. There's people that were thrown out of Joseph Smith's church and still said that they saw all of the supernatural things that they saw. And they never recanted. Because when something unexpected happens in your religion, and your religion starts to have doubt associated whether it's true, it's kind of like a sunk cost fallacy. You are all in and you absolutely believe it. You can't acknowledge that reality has happened. You've got to still think that your religion is true. We've seen this time and time and time again.
Died for pagan religions, etc., things like that. I mean, I don't think it's a great argument to say just because someone said, yes, this can get me great bodily harm, but yeah, I'm still going to die for it because I believe in it. I don't think that I do not see the...
Well, I have another, I'm not saying this happened, but I have another possibility that the religion sort of was then used as a catalyst to try and get the population of Judea to rise up against the Roman occupation, or at least attempt to do that, right? It may not have worked, but if they really wanted to overthrow the Romans, a Jewish Messiah coming back to establish the kingdom of God on earth, well, that might be a motivator for some people. So could they have used that in a really Machiavellian way to try to, get people to challenge Rome as the authority? Religions have been used like that for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that happened, right? I don't know enough about it. But why isn't that possible? Why isn't it possible that the apostles sat around and went, dang, dude died. What are we going to do now? Look, we've got to overthrow these Romans. Let's say he was resurrected. We all saw it. Convince everybody that we saw it. The Messiah has come back to save us from the evil Roman Empire, and they will follow us. Why is that not possible? Because it is. It's possible.
causal connection between them doing that, and the argument at hand being true.
Why would they die for something they knew was false?
Because there might be a better reason. There might be a reason for them to swear this if it's in the best interest of, say, their entire people, their country. Look, spies will lie through their teeth in order to do the best for their country, or what they believe to be best for their country. And they will and somebody can be tortured and waterboarded and still lie. Not because they think there's something supernatural going on, but because they think that the end result is worth more than the suffering that they're going through. And it doesn't have to be religion. There's plenty of people that will suffer and even be, give their lives for some purpose greater than themselves.
I don't think, sometimes it's the same thing. It's like we were just talking about truth. I think sometimes I believe that they think what they saw was true.
Okay, why would they think Jesus rose from the dead if he didn't? Why?
Because they were a doomsday sect who had just lost the leader that was going to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, and he dropped dead. And if they can't accept that kingdom isn't coming, they might start to see things. The human mind is weird. Why do people see visions of anything? Why do people see visions of the black dog, right? Like if you're unaware of the black dog, that's a fascinating one. I think someone did a movie. I think it was Patrick Swayze did a movie on it. It's basically when you've been driving for a long time, according to truck drivers, when you've been driving for a long time, you're tired. Apparently, a black dog can run up the street and jump at the truck, right? The black dog. Now, what I think it is incredibly tired, incredibly stressed truck drivers who this story has gone round and their mind inserts it for them. The mind can be very, very strange in the way that it operates. People have seen dead relatives before and they could swear they saw them, but they didn't. It's the brain playing tricks on them. And if these people were sleep deprived, they were absolutely devastated by the loss of the leader that they absolutely beloved, they could have seen them.
Would they think that?
Limited scientific knowledge back then, limited secondhand accounts. You hear from a friend of a friend of a friend.
No. The people that saw it, why would Peter be martyred? Why would Paul be martyred? Why would James be martyred?
For any other reason, I don't see the difference between that and any other religion.
Well, we don't know for sure they were. That's the thing. Like, a couple of the stories are like, oh, James was stabbed in Africa. Yeah, but we don't know whether it was over his religion. And if it was, we don't know that they gave him any chance to recant and say, oh, no, I made it up. We don't know. This is something that the early church holds, but isn't necessarily that. It's like sort of saying, well, why did Joseph Smith never recant? He died a martyr. And people in the Mormon church or the Church of Latter-day Saints claim that he is a martyr. But Joseph Smith was shot trying to escape a prison, like trying to bust out of a prison, when a mob came for him, kind of thing. Like he was going to be attacked by a mob. He ran out of the prison and somebody shot him. Like it's hardly a martyr. This is the same thing. They died. Did they die still believing? I don't know. I don't know their minds. Did they get a chance to recant? We don't know. Could they have stopped themselves being killed if they did say, well, I don't believe it anymore? We don't know.
Other person who's ever been martyred for anything.
Well, because these people witnessed an empirical event, a resurrection.
Okay, stop. Because he's using empirical really loosely. Okay, he's saying empirical is of the senses. Okay, so we don't know if this was empirical or not, right? If they're making it up or they were mistaken, it's not empirical. No. I mean, you might say, hey, it's, using the sight. Okay. You can see a mirage, right, in the desert. That's empirical. Doesn't mean that it's water there. Oh, welcome to the Time Travelers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Give my best to Nick. Hopefully he has gotten his stuff under control. Big shout out to Nick and all the Time Travelers heading over here. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully we're talking about really bad arguments for the resurrection and a student doing an absolute cracker of a job holding an apologist's feet to the fire. I like what she's doing. She doesn't get to push back as much as she could in a debate, but I think she's doing fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
There's nothing in Islam that says, that is equivalent to what Christianity says. Christianity is...
Oh, and I've been raided by Vic as well. Oh, your D&D shit? Oh, okay. Wait, is that a raid or is that just you, wrapping up and coming over? Either way, welcome. Welcome.
Basing their belief on an empirical event that a man died after predicting he'd rise from the dead, and then he really did rise from the dead.
I'm not sure he predicted he would rise from the dead. I think he sort of said that they would have everlasting life, but I'm not... He didn't really predict being crucified and rising from the dead. I'm not sure when he predicted that. Unless just sort of taking the inference, the binding of Isaac in the First Testament was a prophecy of Jesus kind of thing, which I think is really, that's really pushing it. That is not a prophecy or prediction that, really fits. I don't, when did Jesus predict he would rise from the dead exactly? I don't know. Okay, so it says in the gospel he predicted. Okay, so yeah, so not in the original Pauline documents. It's in the documents written well after. So did he actually predict that? Well, no, that's a claim, right? That's the gospel saying, hey, he predicted it beforehand. How do we know that actually happened? Well, we don't. We don't.
Yeah, and I think you could say that for,
So what's your explanation then? Hallucinations? Wrong tomb? What is it?
I wasn't there.
I do like what she's doing here, but so the problem is that Frank's going, well, you've got to have one explanation. Absolutely not. Right? He's sort of saying you've got to say they were all lying or they were all hallucinating or, this one explanation, it was all a conspiracy, all of it. No, that's not how events in real life work. Right? Some people could be lying. Some could be hallucinating. Some could be doing wishful thinking. Some could have conspired. Others not. Events when you have something occurring is rarely just everybody is doing this. That is not the case. That is absolutely not the case.
But that's a great thing. That's why I think I don't have to believe in it because I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened. But that's why I don't feel unnecessary.
So the great thing that she's doing here is basically, so what Frank is doing is sort of a deductive argument, sort of doing deduction, saying, okay, I'm going to eliminate all these possibilities. The only one left is that Jesus was a supernatural agent that rose from the dead and, is an incarnation or a god, basically, an incarnation of a god. Right? So the great thing that she's doing is basically reiterating, and you don't have to give what happened, right? All you have to do to defeat his argument is say it is possible these other things happen. Because don't forget, he is hinging his argument on the impossibility or the extreme unlikelihood of anything else happening. You don't have to prove that, hey, there were people in a sect that was talking about a doomsday, the leader died. You don't have to show that, hey, he definitely did lie, or this person did this or that. No, there's a possibility that some people lied, some people had visions, some people were deluded, some people didn't see anything and decided to go along with it because they were part of a group that was influenced by the other. This is a nuanced topic that they're trying to just boil down to. Give one thing that explains everything. She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to. She's just saying, why isn't it possible? And Frank can't give an answer. Instead, he's going, prove that it happened. It's not what she's saying.
Sorry, feel like I'm compelled to believe in that.
No one's compelled. You have free will. You go in the direction you want. But let me ask you this, Delaney. If Christianity really was true, would you become a Christian?
I don't think it's true, and I don't think it will
if
be.
it was.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on this if, right? It's like saying, if it turned out that Hinduism is correct, would you become a Hindu? Well, that's a big if. And I think for my mind, I mean, she's going to answer how she answers. For my mind, I don't think it would necessarily make me a Christian, because the definition of Christian is so varied among different Christians. If it was true, and it really does depend on what the God is like. Like, the God of the Old Testament is a horrible, vengeful, nasty piece of work that, to say has collateral damage in that story, it is absolutely repugnant how that entity treats people. Just ordinary people, peasants, slaves, people like that. I wouldn't become a Christian and worship that God. If it's the nicey fuzzy bunnies Jesus, then maybe. I don't know, but it's a moot point, right? It's kind of going, what he's trying to do is sort of a poisoning the well. Okay, he's trying to say, hey, you won't become a Christian, therefore you're biased against it. Like, you've got an underlying bias against Christianity. That's why you're not instantly seeing that my arguments have weight. And no, it's like, no. She's not believing it because your arguments are terrible.
I don't think it's a good question, honestly. I don't think it is true.
So the answer is no. Okay. If I gave you a book.
That's not what she said. She said, I don't think it's true. It's a moot point. Because if it's true, because whether you're a Christian doesn't really matter of the reality of things. So let me put it this way. There's two things. There's ontology and epistemology, right? Ontology is the actuality of things. It is the whether or not, I do have a coffee cup in my hand. Right? Like, it is the sort of metaphysical reality, the actuality behind things. Epistemology is how we know, why we believe it, why we think we know this, our reasons for knowing it. Now, we can never get at the ontology. The ontology is just what is behind everything. So the epistemology is, I can see it, I can feel it, I know what a coffee cup is because I've encountered them before, and we have these words to describe. Like, all of that stuff is epistemology. So when he says if it was true, he's kind of going to, if it was true, I still wouldn't believe it because the reasons why are insufficient, right? So no, I wouldn't be a Christian because I would need good reasons to believe it. It's like sort of saying, well, if Bigfoot was true, would you go out and try to find Bigfoot? And it's like, Well, no, I would need reasons to believe it's true, not just in the background somewhere it happens to be true. Convince me that it's true and I'll go out and look for Bigfoot. Don't just say, well, if it's true, then you're ridiculous for not becoming a Bigfoot tracker. No, she's not. So it's a flawed question, but she doesn't really have the time to sort of explain why it's a flawed question. But it is. Like, if I believed it was true, I might become a Christian. And I think that is more prescient. But he's like, oh, if it's true. Whether it's true or not, we can only go with things that are rational to believe and you have reasonable evidence for. So if it's true, you still don't have reasonable evidence for it. No, you wouldn't become a Christian. If you believed it was true, would you become a Christian? Maybe. It depends on the God we're talking about.
Would you read it?
Sure, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't think it's not fiction. I don't see, I think there's a lot of things.
Let me just ask one more question,
Sure.
Lane. I appreciate you bringing this up, but why would you not possibly want, if there is a God, him to offer you paradise by taking anything you've done wrong upon himself? Why would you not want a being like that to offer you forgiveness and paradise?
So did we see the pivot, everybody? Did we see the pivot? Right? He's talking about reasons for believing in any sort of text kind of thing, and in the claims made by this text. And now he's gone to, if the text is true, why wouldn't you want it to be true? That is not how we evaluate text, right? It's not how we evaluate historical things. It's not how we evaluate anything. We don't go, well, what do I want to be true? That is what I'm going to believe. That I cannot think of a worse way to reason than that. Like just going, well, what do I want to be true? And that if this is true, is doing some insanely heavy lifting here, right? It's like saying, would you give money to a Nigerian prince? And she's like, well, I don't believe it's true, so no. And he's like, but if it was true, would you give money to a Nigerian prince? And then basically going, if it's true, why wouldn't you want the great return on your investment from giving money to a Nigerian prince? It's a flawed question because there's no way for you to know if it's true or not besides the reasons why you think it's true. Right? Like this sort of example of, well, why don't you just skip your reasoning and go straight to whether it's true or not? Frank, our reasoning is how we arrive at whether we think it's true. We can't just skip that step. It's wild. I don't understand what his point is. Like, yeah, if I believed it's true and that, there's a heaven, would you become Christian? Maybe. It depends, and she gives a really good answer for this.
I think that's a very interesting question because I've always been of the opinion that I don't want there to be an afterlife. I find no comfort in it. I find more comfort in there being empty, black nothingness, genuinely. And I'm not saying this to be contrarian or to be, provocative. Genuinely, I think that is more comforting than living in this eternal limbo or whatever. People described as perfect happiness. I'm not sure, first of all, I don't see evidence for that. Second of all, I'm not sure I want that. Furthermore, I'm not sure that I would want to be there when I know people are, according to your religion, suffering somewhere else. If I know that, one of my friends who sinned for whatever reason is burning in hell forever and I'm just hanging out in heaven, I don't think that would be perfect happiness. I don't think I really want that.
That is a perfect answer. I would not be me like I could not ignore the plight of presumably billions of people being tortured and be happy and live happily ever after. You know, I would be the guy to try to do a protest to God because people are being tortured in hell, right? Or you know, even if you're a annihilationist, right? You just think, or you know, people obliterate, like, you know, they just end basically, and then the good people go to heaven and the bad people just end, like they're Thanos snapped out of existence kind of thing. I don't think I'd be happy with that. I think I would be like, you know, what did these people do wrong? And especially knowing that the only thing they did wrong was like choose the wrong God or not believe in a God. You know, like I think I would be like, yeah, that seems incredibly unfair. And then I would probably be sent to hell as well because I'm questioning. So, you know, I think that she's got a really good point. That what kind of heaven could you just sit in and worship a God that allows people to be tortured or just wiped out, and the only reason that you got there was that you believed in it? That seems wrong to me. I don't think I'd be happy with that. And of course the other slight hiccup of not actually believing it exists because there is no evidence for it.
I really do not honestly see what is compelling people to want there to be an afterlife, to want there to be.
So if your friend, as you put it, is literally burning in hell, what would your friend want you to choose?
I don't know if they could think right now because they'd probably be burning, as y'all say.
No,
but
if they are conscious and they know you're still here, what choice would they want you to make?
Well, they'd probably.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't answer the question, because they would probably want you to be not burning in hell, same as them. You know, I will give credit where credit's due. Usually people are empathic enough that if they're suffering, they don't want people they care about to suffer alongside with them. But it doesn't address the point of she doesn't want them to suffer as well, right? Like, how could you be in hell? Even if, like, it's her friend, why does it have to be her friend? Are the only people you care about your friends? Because just say you convert all of your friends, there's still going to be, you know, some babies or some you know, young kids from China burning in. I don't want them to go through that either. Like, this is the thing. He's sort of like, oh, but that's why you should choose heaven and tell all of your friends so you all go there. What about just the random humans? Like, I didn't know any of the Jewish people that, you know, were tortured during World War II. It doesn't mean that I will just sit back and go, hey, that's fine, it's none of my friends. No, it's anybody. You know, it's so wild. What would your friend want for you? Well, my friend would probably want me not to be tortured in hell, but would probably want them not to be tortured in hell. And if the only reason they're there is they didn't believe in a God, what kind of God is that? Holy crap.
Want me to, you know, be in heaven, but guess what? That's what I wouldn't feel comfortable knowing that my friend is still burning there.
Okay, what you've just done is you've said exactly what C.S. Lewis said.
C.S. Lewis was terrible. Okay, Narnia was terrible. I mean, it wasn't terrible, it just wasn't as good. He always wanted to sort of, you know, overshadow J.R. Tolkien and failed miserably. But his arguments were terrible, absolutely terrible. And, you know, we picked them apart. They are actually absolutely terrible.
C.S. Lewis said that there's only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, thy will be done. If you don't...
Yeah, that's absolute nonsense. Because those people did not want to burn in hell in this situation, right? Like, they didn't say, hey, I don't see enough reasons to believe and I want to burn in hell. That isn't what they said. They said, I don't have enough reasons to believe, therefore I won't. That's not a choice that you've made, right? It's kind of like somebody sort of going, vote for me or else I'm going to make your life miserable. You can say, well, I don't know how you would do that. No, I'm not going to vote for you. It doesn't mean you've chosen that. That is something else that's been chosen for you. He's trying to sort of victim blame. It's almost like somebody going, give me all your money or else I'm going to stab you. And you going, no, I'm not giving you my money. That doesn't mean you've chosen to be stabbed, right? You've made a choice of not handing over money, and then that other person has made a choice. It's amazing how much he is sort of transferring the choice of doing this or not onto a person making a choice about their beliefs. Just because you've chosen not to comply doesn't mean you've chosen for somebody to do something else. And that's why C.S. Lewis is a terrible apologist, because this just doesn't hold water. I take no responsibility except for my choices. What happens from there is yours.
Want Jesus now, you're not going to want him in eternity. You will be separated from him, and that's what hell is.
So you think I'm going to hell?
Sure. If you...
Yeah, I love that she just laughs at that, because they think it's such a threat. Like, I mean, I'm not sure about Turek, but a lot of theists, especially the internet theists out there, they will say, oh, but you're going to hell. And I cannot properly express to them how little that concerns and worries me. You might as well say, if you don't believe you're not going to get a present from Santa, okay. Like I cannot even describe how little that concerns me when they say that. Oh, but you're going to go to hell. Okay, I don't believe in a hell because I'm a functioning adult. Like I think that. I don't know. It's really weird. It's very strange. And I know that not everybody comes from my background. I know that I was raised in a secular household with none of these concepts taught. And I do really feel for those people whom it triggers the trauma of their religious upbringing, where they may have been told, oh, if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell, kind of thing. If you don't get good grades, you're going to, and it was used as a bludgeon to hit them into line, to make them do things. Like, I really feel for those people. But having been raised in a secular household, it is laughable that people think that's a threat, or they think it's going to be convincing. You may as well tell me that Big Bird is going to come after. Like, it is just ridiculous to me. So I love that she just laughs. It really just makes him impotent. Yeah, you are going to hell. Yeah, sure. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I totally, like, to somebody that went through a religious upbringing that may have been traumatic, that's a horrible thing to do. But obviously she's just like, yeah, good one, mate.
If Christianity's true, you just said you don't want to go to heaven. What else is there? There's only two possible options.
That if is doing some real heavy lifting there, Frank. If it's true. Yeah, if it's true. And that's not necessarily the case. What if all of this religion thing is a test by God to see who's gullible enough to believe this stuff? And it's the people that don't believe based upon insufficient evidence that are rewarded in the end. Yeah, if we're making crap up, we might as well go hog wild. What if that's the case? What if it's Islam that's true? What if that Hinduism got it correct? What if none of them are correct and there's some obscure religion involving frogs and rocks that is the real religion? What if? This is the problem with placing ifs on if it's true. And I can't believe that a modern apologist that has the audience size as Frank Turek is basically doing Pascal's wager. Okay, so he's doing two things here. He's doing Pascal's wager, i.e., you've got everything to gain if you give your money to the Nigerian prince and really not much to lose, right? That's number one. That's what he's doing, Pascal's wager. Why not just believe it on prospect is Pascal's wager. And number two, what he's doing is what's called an appeal to consequence. He's going, wouldn't it be nice if there's a heaven? Therefore, you should believe that it exists. Completely faulty reasoning. Absolutely faulty reasoning. And quite frankly, I'm amazed that an apologist the size of Turek is going to be using Pascal's wager. Unbelievable.
You're going to be with Jesus in the afterlife or you're not.
You're going to be with him in the afterlife or you're not. Or he might not exist. You could not be with him in the afterlife and there is no afterlife, Frank. What if that is true? But it doesn't matter because what Frank is doing is something called a category error. He's sort of going, base your beliefs on what is actually true that you can't get access to. Remember the ontology? You can't get access to that. So instead of using your epistemology, coming up with reasons and evidence and logic and rationality and finding why you should believe a thing, he's saying, believe it based upon nothing. Just believe that it's true. Just because it's true. Because it's true, because it's true, because it's true. It's not an argument, Frank.
What other option is there?
Well, I think there's the option that you're wrong, personally.
Well, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, you could be wrong. What then? What if the Hindus are right? Looks like it's a, insect body for you, mate. You're going to be reincarnated into a caterpillar. Good one, Frank.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you talked about looking at evidence. Mm-hmm. How can there even be evidence in a world that there is no God, there is no organizer, there is no mind behind all this? Evidence.
Yeah, so this is where Frank takes a hard right turn into presup, and may whatever God exist have mercy on his soul. Like, this turns terrible. This is presup. This is, I'm going to assume that the regularity of the universe is made by a God. I'm just going to assume that up front. I'm going to just grant it to myself up front. Therefore, there is a God. Therefore, you should believe in it. It is the worst argument. There's a reason why presuppositional apologetics is not even taught in philosophy. It's not even an argument in philosophy. Because all you're doing is a fallacy called begging the question. You are assuming something up front that has not been proven. You're basically saying that, and it sort of comes down to the transcendental argument for God. Sorry, my brain is... Look, Frank Turek is frying my brain with just how bad this is. I'm so sorry. Transcendental argument for God, which is basically says, well, God made morality, or morality is dependent on God. Morality exists, therefore God exists. Well, the problem is it's a circular argument. You're begging the question. You're basically saying, hey, the God exists to do all of this stuff, so therefore the God exists. It's a terrible argument.
We wouldn't even exist. Nothing would exist. Reason wouldn't exist unless there's a mind that has given us the laws of reason and minds to know evidence.
Respectfully, I think we've jumped a few steps ahead in the argument there.
No, we jumped way back.
No, they jumped forward. So the reason why she's saying we've jumped forward and she is correct is because we're working from this axiomatic point where we see the universe around us. We see the sort of reality around us. We agree that all of these things are real, that Frank's talking to her, she's talking to Frank, there's an audience. We agree on all of this stuff, right? And he's going to, well, the reason all of that exists is God, right? And she's going, well, we've jumped forward to, explaining why all of this is here and explain, we haven't gotten there. And he's going, no, we're going right back. We're going to assume that God did all of this stuff to start with. And that's my evidence for God. I would probably, if I was her, I would probably ask a question like, and this is no slight on her. She's doing fantastic, okay? Just to be clear, I nitpick a lot, I overanalyze a lot. That's just what I do. But I would probably insert something like, oh, it was an immaterial, can you show me an immaterial mind? How do you know this immaterial mind exists? Like, if it's an immaterial, all the minds I have ever seen have a physical substrate of some sort to them, whether that be a neural network or some sort of a brain, some sort of nervous system, all of them, every single one. I have never seen a mind that is immaterial. Could you please show me that or demonstrate that in some way? Because that seems to go against the literal trillions of minds we have seen. That seems to be the exception. So what reason should I believe that exists? But he's sort of saying, hey, these things can't exist without an immaterial mind. Okay, do you want to demonstrate that immaterial mind? Oh, you're begging the question. You're just assuming it and presupposing it up front. Another good question is, do you know that? Right? Do you know that a immaterial mind created the universe, right? That's another one to shortcut presups. Do you know that? So here's why that's a shortcut, okay? And here's why it's such a wrench in the gears of presup. It's because they will claim to know what they're presupposing. They're going to claim to know that God created morality, God created the universe, God made laws that are natural laws. God did all of this. Now, presuppositions do not have justifications. They're just things you assume. Like, I can presuppose that if my wife's going out, that she's going to the shops. Right? What reason do I have for that? No other reason, right? I presuppose it. I'm basically, before any information comes in, I'm going to assume that's true. Okay? There is no justification for that. Right? There's just, my wife left the house, I'm just going to assume it. That's a presupposition. Okay, let's assume I have no other information, no other, if I'm getting to, well, that's where she usually goes, this time of night, or, she was taking a shopping bag with her kind of thing, right? Those aren't presuppositions. Those are evidence-based reasons for why you believe that. Okay, that has justification. But a presupposition doesn't have them and doesn't need them. Because you are just saying, hey, I'm going to assume this, right? So when she leaves, I can presuppose she's gone to the shop. Do I know that? Well, hold on a second. How do I know it if it's got, so knowledge is justified true belief. How do I know that she's going to the store if I'm using a presupposition, and a presupposition necessarily has no justification? How do I know it? I can't. I cannot. If I make a presupposition, I cannot know that. I can believe it, but I can't know that. Because a presupposition precludes justification. If I have justification, like my wife has shopping bags, she usually goes to the store at this time, she tells me she's going to the store, right? That's a justification. It's not a presupposition. I'm getting the evidence and then, making a conclusion. So asking if they know it is a really good thing to do. And if they are using a presupposition, they can't know it, because they can't possibly have justified
Before we
it?
even get to the New Testament, we've got to establish why can we even know what evidence is, and why is this an orderly universe to even know what is true and what isn't?
Absolutely. I think it's due to science. It's due to the wonderful, physics.
So I probably wouldn't have gone to science. I probably would have gone to more down the route of empiricism. Like, how can we know what is true? Well, at the end of the day, it seems like everybody uses their senses to know what in reality is true. Like, we all depend on our... Like, yeah, someone might be an idealist and argue that, truth is found ultimately in the mind, but when they lose their car keys, they're searching for them with their eyes and, looking for them. If they lose their phone, they're going to be ringing it and listening to it, listening for it. When the rubber hits the road, everyone's an empiricist, right? They're not looking internally for when they should cross the road. They're looking for traffic. So I think that just even on a practical level, everybody's an empiricist. You kind of have to make this extra, but truth only comes from... Look, I think that truth is highly contextual, and I think that when you're talking about what is true in reality, it's not a thing by itself. It's not this thing that's been produced. It is just simply when a proposition has some kind of overlap with what reality is. That's it.
So how the universe came to be. Yes, I do think it started. No, I do not think it was God. No,
What was it?
I think it was physics.
But physics had a beginning.
No, there are indeed.
Yeah, so what she just means is natural events, just natural events occurring. Physics had a beginning. Well, the laws of physics seem to have a point where they break down, but he's conflating the model that we have of physics, the laws of physics, with the sort of background sort of laws of the universe, or the background structure of the universe. She's just saying that natural events can cause the universe to begin. Sure, why not? Why not? Why not? He's sort of saying, the universe had a cause, it's got to be a god. Why? This immaterial mind that you're talking about? Well, you're presupposing that. You're not showing it. You're just claiming it. And this is why Frank is utterly failing here, because he's just assuming all of this stuff and then expecting her to agree with him. Like, she doesn't have to show it was natural causes to believe it. Everything else has natural causes. I'm not sure why we would sort of say, well, the universe can't have had a natural cause. It must be supernatural. Why?
Physical theories nowadays that propose how the universe started without a God. And my question for you actually would be, where did God come from? How did God start?
Well,
If
by
everything is
definition, there has to be a first cause. Either the universe is the uncaused first cause, or something outside the universe is the uncaused first cause. And all the evidence shows that the universe had a beginning. If the universe had a beginning, there must be something outside.
The evidence does not show that the universe had a beginning. I've talked about this in length of the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which they sort of say, this theorem, the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin, or the BGV, says that the universe had a beginning. No. It says there was a beginning to the inflationary period of the universe, right? Like, it doesn't say there was a definite beginning. It just says that the universe started its inflationary period. Right, and two of the people, both I believe it's Guth and Borde, Guth and Vilenkin, have both stated that categorically in interviews and talking to them, that they say, hey, our theory just says the inflationary period had a beginning. It does not have anything to say on the very beginning of the universe, right? Like, it doesn't say anything about it. And the reason why the third one hasn't made an opinion on it is because they died. Okay, so it's just like he's just making stuff up. No, they don't agree that the universe had a beginning. They don't do that. I probably wouldn't have gone, if I was her, to, well, where did God come from? Because he's just going to say, well, God's a necessary being. Necessary beings don't need to have a beginning. They always exist. Well, why can't the universe always exist? Why can't that be the case?
outside the universe that is spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, and intelligent to call.
I'm sorry, why is it spaceless, timeless, personal, and intelligent? He's trying to go to William Lane Craig, and William Lane Craig doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, of sort of fleshing out why this has to be an agent, and it has to be intelligent, and it has to be all of these things added on. Like, it doesn't. Why?
Cause the universe to have a beginning. You can't go on an infinite regress of causes. I hope you agree with that.
No, I agree, but I think you've actually just assumed, though, that you've just assumed right there that there is something outside of it, that there has to be, you've assumed in your argument that there has to be something outside, immaterial.
Yes,
I don't believe that.
If the material world had a beginning, there's got to be something immaterial that brought it into existence.
No. Could just be material. Could just be material. And there's another of other cases that it doesn't deal with, like a cyclic universe, one that loops in on itself kind of thing. Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but a lot of things in physics are. And we don't know. She's not saying that any of these scenarios are true. She's saying, because don't forget that Frank, again, he's doing the, well, it's impossible to be anything else but a god. And all you have to say, well, it's possible it was just natural events. That's it. She doesn't have to show that it is. She just has to show that it's possible it's not a god. And that's all. And when we have literally like almost no understanding of the origins of the universe because our physics kind of breaks down at that point, then, you know, you don't have to prove it. We don't know anything about it. Show that it's a god. But he's showing it's a god by saying it can't be anything else. That's terrible. Why can't it be natural causes? Oh, you can't explain the natural causes. You can't explain the God. How did the God do it? You don't know. You're just giving a one-word answer.
That's correct.
No, I think we just have the material world and that's it.
Well, the evidence doesn't show that.
I think actually...
The evidence doesn't show that we just have the material world. Can you provide the evidence of an immaterial world, Frank? You know, I won't hold my breath, but please provide the evidence for an immaterial world. Like, holy crap.
No, it doesn't. Sorry. Just thank you, Delaney.
I appreciate
it.
that. Thank you.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.
Oh, wow. He's big mad. Look, I just want to... Grrr. Grrr. Oh, she's pleased. You should be pleased. You absolutely should be pleased. You did fantastic. She did absolutely fantastic. Asked the right questions. I was nitpicking, but she did fantastic. He mad. He mad. The evidence just shows the world's everything's material. Yeah, that's what the evidence shows. If it's immaterial, please present the evidence for this immaterial stuff. Where is this immaterial mind? Because I've only seen minds that are dependent on material things. I've never seen an immaterial or experienced an immaterial mind. So some of these, I just love the reactions at the end. He's like, grr. She's like, that was really fun. And the person behind is like, am I right for worshipping a god? Am I? This person here is like, can I? No, I can't do that. Yeah, so that's Frank Turek getting absolutely you know, I don't think I'm overstating it, just ruffle stomped by some random student. And she was great. Like, she was really good. She didn't lose her cool. She didn't sort of, you know, rise to that, you know, like get flustered by him being obnoxious. You know, laughing off the threats of hell is definitely the way to go. Like, if you want to make someone like Turek mad, when he starts to talk about you burning in hell, you just go, I don't believe that. Like, I'm sorry, but you can show it, but I'm not just going to believe it off you telling me it's so. It's ridiculous. And I realize not everybody experiences the same, but look, I cannot explain just how little that That threat worries me. I cannot articulate it because it worries me about as much as I worry about, a rainbow hitting the top of my head and giving me sunburn. It's ridiculous. Like it's just, look, I'm in Australia. We have animals to worry about here, okay? We've got crocodiles and poisonous frigging marsupials or monotremes, and we've got sharks that will, like, I am not worried about some immaterial torture chamber in the future. I'm worried about that goddamn emu, all right? Like, seriously, I don't give it a slightest thought. It is ludicrous. And, it's kind of like somebody going, but what if you miss out on the prince giving you $1 million, the Nigerian prince giving you $1 million? Yeah, I'll somehow deal with it. Sure. I will somehow deal with that. Okay? Again, it is an appeal to consequence. It's basically going, well, wouldn't it be bad if you're burning in hell? So therefore, no, that's no reason to believe something. Whether something is good or the consequence of something is good or bad is no reason to believe it is true or not true. That's no reason to believe it. Oh, it'll be bad to miss out on the $1 million from the Nigerian prince. I better believe it. That's a terrible way to think. Terrible. And yeah, I just love Frank Turek getting owned by some random student with a smile on her face. Like, it just happy to go on and live her life while Frank absolutely gets tied up in knots about it. I mean, he even delved into the presup stuff, which is just, it's a non-starter. It's just saying God is true because I am going to assume God is true. I mean, you can do that, but is that a reliable way to get to the truth? Oh, but God made truth. Because you assume that. Okay. Wow. Problems. Big problems. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. That was actually really fun. I always like Frank when he's at his worst because, man, that is bad. I don't know how these people, I do know how these people, Frank did marketing in, his youth. So I think he's a good marketer. I think that's how he got so huge. But, I don't know, like, I would expect better from somebody on a stage at a university making arguments. I would expect better. This is the kind of stuff you would meet in a Christian, open room on YouTube at 3 a.m. Like, seriously, this is bad. Like, really bad. But, hey, it's now recorded for all posterity. And the weirdest part is that Christians are holding up this exchange as like, oh, Frank Turek completely owns atheism. I don't know how you have that takeaway, quite frankly. Especially as she went off smiling and he went off big mad. I don't know. Like, he was frustrated because she wasn't just giving in to his ridiculous tactics. But, yeah, so that is Fundamentalist Fails. That was a total fail. I would absolutely love to challenge Frank Turek's arguments. I think they're absolutely appalling. I think I could rip them apart. I think most people, hey, a college student can rip them apart, let's face it. But, yeah, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I want to give a big thank you to In Time. I want to give a big thank you to Vic, who may or may not have rated me. I want to give a big thank you to Stop the Stupidity. Hey, speaking of which, yeah, okay, that's why you came up. Stop the Stupidity with 5 readerships. Thank you so much, STS. That's amazing. Excuse me, I just need a sip of coffee before I start doing this. Those go out to Megan Fox's Giant Boobs. Fun Love Bond. Wow, I 100%. I didn't know I'd be reading out Megan Fox's Giant Boobs today, but yeah, here I am. Well, maybe it should be Frank Turek's Giant Boobs. Is that mean? That's mean, right? HTGY6YTHG7Y. Wow, that is the hardest one to do. The unlucky Legum and Michael Maskinos. Thank you so much. Yes, Skeptic Haven as well. Yeah, I was going to get to that, Archer. I just sort of got interrupted by Stop the Stupidity being an absolute legend. Dead set frigging legend. So, yeah. No, thank you so much, STS. Winners, chicken dinners. Enjoy your emotes and your other benefits, including member streams and my adoration. Thank you so much. STS, thank you. But yes, thanks to Skeptic Haven. Thanks to anybody else that I'm missing. I think it was In Time, Skeptic Haven, and Viclet came along, but I don't know whether she was doing a raid or not. Let's just call it a raid. Maybe it was a one-person raid. Let's just say it is. Okay, let's just do that. But thank you so much, everybody. Do take care. Don't forget, be kind to yourself. Okay, be kind to yourself. If you are triggered by mentions of hell and things like that, I completely understand. You don't have to talk to these people if it is causing trauma to rise. You don't have to. I can sit in that space and laugh at them because I didn't go through that. If I had been through it, it might be a completely different story. Okay, don't think that I'm saying, oh, I'm tougher than you. Absolutely not. I think that if I did go through that experience of being raised a fundamentalist Christian, I would probably be upset by somebody telling me I was going to hell as well, just because of the trauma it would bring up. But be kind to yourself. If that does, make you upset, you don't have to listen to these people. They are just spouting claims. You don't have to listen to them. Be kind to yourself. No, Kaylee, we have a rule around here. We have a rule. You have to be kind to yourself. Okay? Be kind to yourself. That's the rule. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have to. I've decided. You have to be kind to yourself. Okay? It doesn't mean putting yourself above others. It doesn't mean... Because the weird thing is that we'll be kind to our... Just say you have a best friend and you'll be kind to them. You'll understand when they make mistakes. You'll understand when they are upset. And then we beat the crap out of ourselves for making the tiniest little mistake. No, you're going to be kind to yourself. I have decided. Okay, that doesn't mean just letting yourself off when you do something wrong. That doesn't mean, not holding yourself responsible. It just means you're going to be kind. You are right. You don't have to do what I say, but I'm gonna insist. That's my thing. Look, Kaylee, honestly, so it came about when I was doing yoga, right? My yoga instructor sort of said, and I never got into the whole spiritual thing. I never got into the whole spiritual thing, like it didn't, I wasn't into that stuff, but I just was doing it for exercise, flexibility, that kind of thing. And the instructor said, thank yourself for doing this today. And like it just sort of triggered something in my mind that I'm thinking, how is it if somebody does the dishes for us, right? Like if my wife does the dishes, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Or if they do something nice, like make me a coffee, I'm like, oh, thank you so much for that. And, I'm thanking them for it. But if I do it for myself, I don't appreciate it. I don't thank myself for it. And it got me down this thing of why are we appreciative of other people but not ourselves? And that's sort of one of the things that made me realize that, yes, and exactly what Stop Stupidity summed it up. It's easy to be kind to others. Yes. So I try to practice being kind to myself as well. Like just treating me like I would treat a friend of mine, right? Like somebody who I care about. It doesn't mean I'm arrogant or in love with myself. It just means I respect myself. That when I do something that is good, I can say, well done. I think a lot of sort of stuff is how you talk to yourself, how how you treat yourself. Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I can't make you do anything, but please consider it. Try it on for size, maybe. You know, of course I can't make you do anything, but I think try it on for size. Just when you do something that is good for you, you go, thank you, Mark. That was very useful, and I really appreciate you doing that. It's a weird feeling. I know it seems weird, but hey, it works for me. It works for me. But thank you so much, everybody. And I do appreciate all of you too. This has been a fantastic stream. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for coming along, laughing, crying, becoming frustrated, and lashing out at somebody who is really giving the worst arguments ever. Take care of yourselves all, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
To what new horizons can we look now? Where are tomorrow's opportunities? The frontiers of the future are not on any map. But now, what's ahead of us?